Hey everyone, we are Kairos Coffee Chats. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
Today's episode will be one of our many Teaology Talks, where we specifically address tough questions regarding Christianity.
We are very aware of all the tea that comes with theology, so this is our space to spill it all.
So buckle up and let's dive in.
What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan,
I'm Jared.
and we are Kairos Coffee Chats.
This podcast exists as a safe space for you to bring your questions and rethink faith so that you can encounter Jesus personally.
And speaking of rethinking faith, we got a fun topic here today. We are finally getting into the weeds of some more hot topics, I'd say. And we have our friend Chris Adcock again.
Our first repeat offender, our repeat guest.
Awesome.
It was so good last time, had to bring him back, and he loves talking about this stuff. So we had to get all the expertise from him to talk about science, how it relates to the Bible. Did dinosaurs exist?
Big question.
Can we trust the Jurassic Park series?
Definitely.
Come on. Need to. Come on. We need answers. We need answers.
We're so excited for this one. We've already gone through talking about Christianity, Christians in general, misconceptions regarding God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. So we basically had our theological statement laid out in our episodes thus far. And now we get to dive into the weeds of all the other hot topics.
Oh, yes.
Starting with science. Are science and the Bible really antagonists? Are they really enemies?
Always at odds. You always hear like, oh, I can't trust a book of fairy tales. I trust the facts. I trust numbers and what I can see and things that are proven.
We've touched on them briefly, but we definitely wanted to have a third voice on this topic also. So we'll ask you this question, actually, Chris, and then we'll pipe in and here and there. Well, actually, before we start, that's right.
Come on.
Yeah. Before anything, here is our weekly icebreaker before we get into the weeds. Chris, Jared, what natural disaster terrifies you the most? That is my question today.
Oh, man. Well, I'm from California, so I'm not too scared of earthquakes anymore. They used to scare me.
The big one's coming tomorrow.
The big one's coming tomorrow. Oh, man.
Let's all hope. I'm just kidding.
No, hope.
Just
Yeah.
California falls off the edge of the state, just into the water. Man, yeah. So like that, they don't scare me too bad anymore. Although the last one I was in, I was with a buddy. You know how like you're supposed to be like out in a field, like away from buildings. We were downtown in a hotel on like the 7th floor, and watching Monty Python.
Wow.
And we felt this thing shake. And we just kind of looked at each other in like this silent look, like, if it happens, it happens. We're not making it downstairs in time.
We're dead,
And just
I guess.
kept watching the movie. But for me, oh man, I mean, they just happened. The one thing that keeps me from moving out of California where it's cheaper and like to the East Coast is hurricanes. That's just horrifying. It's like, yeah, it's cheaper and it's cool and stuff, but like my house could be gone tomorrow. I'm not about that. Hurricanes are frightening. I don't need a map upgrade for alligators. I don't need that.
Love your reptiles, I know that, but
I know, not that much. Not that much.
How about you, Chris?
So mine is earthquakes.
No, really? Okay.
So
No shade.
Like I've been through hurricanes, I've been through tornadoes, fires. When I experienced my first earthquake when I moved here, it terrified me because a lot of people tell me, "Oh man, tornadoes are like terrifying." I'm like, but you can see them like coming.
That's true.
Like
That's a good point.
I was like, most of the people that aren't so lucky in the storms because and hurricanes as well is they have like trailer homes, which aren't really attached structures, and so. Like, I would say if you wanted to move to Texas and live in a trailer, or Louisiana and live in a trailer, probably not the best idea.
Oh, gosh.
But yeah, the earthquake, you have no idea when it's coming, when it's going to happen, and how strong it's going to be. You don't know any. So, like, every time I hear, like, a car go past my house, like, that has, like, bass playing, I'm like, is it an earthquake? And then I realize it's not, so... but
False alarm again.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
The spontaneity of an earthquake that can
yeah,
that
comes out
can
of
that's fair.
nowhere.
That's fair.
Yeah. What about you, Ryan?
It's a great question. Like you make the point too. Like great point that like tornadoes, hurricanes, storms in general, like they have a buildup. So I guess that does make sense, and earthquakes don't really have that. Mine was, and always will be volcanoes. I used to be deathly scared of volcanoes. Like I lived up in LA, and for some reason I had an irrational fear that we lived at the bottom of a volcano, and
Very irrational.
and I would have nightmares of like I actually just remembered the nightmare I had as a kid that our house got swallowed up by lava. You know, I would be terrified because you're just I mean, I know it's slow, but that is like the heat and the burning and the I don't want that. I don't want any lava on my skin.
You
or
watch
nearby.
Gollum die at the end of Lord of the Rings, and it's just like, no.
Yeah, no.
Also, the plot of the movie Volcano is literally about a volcano sprouting up in LA and
What?
destroying it.
It sounds like a bad sci-fi movie.
No, it was really good. It had
Really?
Tommy Lee Jones was the main character, and it came out around the same. There was like two volcanoes movie, that and then Dante's Peak. With yeah. Oh my gosh.
Heard of these.
All right, movie night soon then. Cause
No, for real, I got
yeah. But Volcano, the
That's my
plot is
favorite kind of
literally
homework.
like people in their homes and they look in their backyard and volcano just like sprouts up and it starts erupting and it shoots these fireballs out everywhere and like I guess the volcano does.
Yeah. I do not live for volcanoes. I'll pass. I do love Hawaii.
I was literally about to say,
I
so
love
we
Hawaii.
won't hear about you moving to Hawaii.
No, I won't be
anytime
moving there.
soon.
I'll be visiting, and that's the extent of my Hawaii visits.
You know that I remember flying through. I think it's the airport that's in Kona, is like on a volcano field. Like literally
It kind
all
of
around
is,
is just
yeah.
black. It's super
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah, it is. It is cool, I'll admit, and I did take a hike when I was in Kona, like around the volcano, but I would not live there for an extended period of time.
Yeah. I'm like, also, why do they not call volcanoes like dead? They call them dormant. I'm like, I feel like when they say dormant, they're like, it could wake up.
It could wake
I'm
up.
like, why don't they just be like, this is a dead volcano? Like, I would feel safer. Okay, it's a dead one, you know? But, like,
As if it could explode at any moment, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
dormant.
exactly.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. Dormant.
like, it's just sleeping for a long time. Like, that doesn't...
You just walk around like.
yeah, exactly.
Good answers, everyone. Good answers. All right. As we mentioned, we are getting into the weeds today, and Chris will help us talk about this poignant topic when it comes to science, logic, scientific method. Does it counteract the Bible or religion in general? Are they really at odds? What we'll do first is we'll talk about what the purpose of science and the Bible are first. So if you were to answer that question, Chris, if someone were to come to you and kind of bring you that kind of like scientific single vision of life, how would you respond to them? Like, what's the purpose of science and Christianity?
So I think at face value and just like with the like kind of culture around it, I think like a lot of people think science and the Bible are separate. Is that what you're kind of asking? I wasn't sure,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I think like a lot of people like there's the Christian view and then there's the scientific view. So of science and
It's like,
yeah.
and then you've got the whole picture kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like they're meant to describe different things. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's the misconception that is very essential to this conversation is when we look through the Bible, when we look through certain passages that talk about creation or like how the world was created, we can get into the weeds and miss the point of the Bible. And we look, instead of looking at the Bible for what it was created to do, which is to reveal God's character to
Yes.
humanity and why we exist, we look at the Bible as like a scientific textbook when it wasn't designed that way.
Yeah, we allow the almost infinite number of questions that we have. Like we encourage bring your questions to the Bible, but you're not going to find written out on every single page the answers that you're looking for in a sense. So it kind of shifts our lens through which we read the Bible to try and find the answer when sometimes it's just not there because like you said, it's not the purpose of why this was written. Because we got to remember these are each individual book is written by someone different. There's 40 different authors here. There is one coherent story, but there are like mini subplots kind of thing. And they all just link together to shape the overarching theme, which is God's redemptive mission for humanity, bringing us back to the garden, back to his presence forever and ever, partnering with God. When we talk about the purpose of the Bible, we look at Genesis. People go to it to find the origins of life. In Genesis, you have Genesis 1 he goes very, very detailed, very day by day, how God creates heavens, the earth, everything that's here. But interestingly enough, when you look at chapter 2, the same thing happens. In chapter 1, God creates everything, and then he creates man. In chapter 2, God creates man, and then he creates everything. So it's like you have these two accounts of creation that seem to contradict at face value. If you're taking them in a hyper literal context, that seems like a contradiction.
Yeah, if we get into this framework where we take everything literally, when there's different writing styles that these authors are trying to use to convey certain things about God and his character as he's creating the world, that's when we can get lost, I think, is when we're not looking at it at a big picture kind of framework.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to science in general, I think there's still a validity to wanting evidence, wanting answers, wanting things to make sense. Would you say Chris, you've experienced that with people that you've talked with and whatnot?
Yeah, definitely. So what I noticed is a lot of people aren't really prepared to answer questions because Satan's crafty. He's gonna find ways to kind of throw things out, questions out. We're gonna question and be like, oh, I don't know that, and it's kind of how do you answer it? Honestly, hey, I don't know the answer. Let me look it up. Let me do some research. Or do you try and say something wrong? Or do you not say anything at all? Is this, are you just getting attacked? So say for instance, someone that's the Genesis story has two different accounts. When you respond to it, do you say are you prepared to respond to that? And should you be? The Bible's a big book.
Yes, it is.
It's okay, well, do I know every single thing? Did this person, is this topic broad enough that most people would know about it? Or is this something that was generally picked out? But someone that investigates that type of stuff. I love the details. Give me the details,
Yeah.
I want to dive into it. Yeah.
How did you personally get into because we've talked about just this topic in general together one-on-one, but how did you get into these kinds of answers, or looking at science and evolution and dinosaurs? How'd you get into learning about this kind of stuff in the first place?
Yeah, so it's pretty funny. So in 8th grade, I went to a private Christian school. I had transferred from public school, and we hadn't really gone over creationism and evolution at the time. So I knew my grandpa was a geologist. So and then my mom's a jewelry designer, but not throwing beads on a piece of elastic. She actually carves rocks and looks for rare stones in states around the U.S. So I already grew up loving rocks and nature and fossils and things like that. And then when I went into 8th grade, I learned there's two views of how the world created, or at least two, because they said we're going to study creationism, but then we're going to study what they said was the wrong one, which was evolution. So, so I studied both, and we had the challenge was we had to debate which one was true. That was our test.
Interesting.
And whoever won, I think everyone got A's because no child left behind, but I think but I don't know, we just got announced if we won. So I took the evolution side because I was I really want to. I didn't know why. I was I want to argue this. I really want to dig deep and figure out, well, if it isn't true, I need to know why. and I won the debate. So like evolution won over creationism.
Oh
debate.
no, Jesus lost.
I know.
Yeah, how the teachers take that?
So my teacher, she's actually, I'm still friends with that teacher. Like,
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, she's super cool.
I actually gotta give props to the school, because I know like some like Christian parents or Christian institutions would just have more of a sheltered view and just be like, "There's just this. Don't worry about that over there." But them just being like, "No, there are two views. Let's hash it out." I really like that. It's like life, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So. But yeah, that's kind of how I got in. So I was like, man, that was really cool. Like, I like arguing with people, and like I like
healthy dialogue.
Yeah, I like doing last minute like presentations. Like everyone's like, "Why aren't you a lawyer?" And I'm like,
Why are you a lawyer?
So yeah, just that point I was like, I love science. I love to argue it, and I love to compare it to the Bible. And then I just kind of carried out throughout my life so far.
That's cool.
I love that.
Speaking of which, when it comes to like science and the Bible, like how would you say you reconcile your relationship between the two personally?
So I never felt like I had to reconcile it. Like I always felt like the scientific arguments that I like found were very supportive of the Christian view. So whether it was creationism or like Noah's Ark or things like that. And what's crazy is like, so I started at like a Christian university, and then I transferred to like a public university, University of North Texas, which has one of the top like forensic labs in the entire United States. But because they have those labs, like you got to study like older bones and stuff. So studying evolution, I actually took old world archaeology with Dr. Faring. You can look him up on Discovery Channel. He discovered a fossil that actually pressed the gap between ape and man even further apart. So it's kind of like, wow. Yeah. So I was like, okay, like God's like kind of showing me like, hey, like all this science, like it's going to keep working for my glory. Like, and every time I research something. So I don't feel like it's ever like, I know it does for like other people and like stuff I read, but personally science and the book like have always like worked for me.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Can you speak more on that? Like the, because I know like a common scientific argument when it comes to evolution and the Bible, like how they contradict, is that we are descended from apes or monkeys, you know. And I definitely was taught that in elementary school, like Homo sapiens, and you know, eventually we evolved into Neanderthals and discovered
from Neanderthals.
There you go. You know, like
Yeah.
I thought we taught that.
Yeah. So we just like a quick. It's so funny. Everyone's a common misconception. Neanderthals actually went extinct. We didn't evolve from them.
There you go.
Yeah, there's an ape before us that.
Okay.
So it's what I can say is if you look at an ape, like just look at one, and evolution really uses like the bonobo. If you look at them, there are similarities. Yeah. Doesn't mean we evolved from them, but there are similarities. So I think that like piques the curiosity of people. Like, okay, well, like, you know, because when did people start guessing that we came from apes? You know, it wasn't until really Charles Darwin, you know, going through the Galapagos Islands and studying the turtles and the birds. He just kind of, you know, started putting some things together. So a lot of people say he's like the father of the theory of evolution. But yeah, so I think, it's a tough one. Like, so with the gap between man and ape. So I don't know, like personally, like I'm still working on that part. Sure. I don't believe that man evolved from ape. So yeah, and I guess we'll get into that later. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because I've always, I remember the first time I heard, I was at my previous church, and they had this guy come in, and he was from one of the Christian colleges around here, and he was talking about not just Christianity in relationship to other religions, but he talked about he threw like I don't know how to describe it, like just straight scientific thinking, like that's where I put my faith in. And he was the first one that said like, yeah, I'm a Christian, I believe in evolution. And I was like, what? I was so like, because I was on the other side where it's like I believe these are incompatible, but I fall on Christianity's side. This is like early in my walk. I'm just like still piecing together all the stuff that I've heard of since I was a kid, but it just went in one ear, went out the other.
You were like, burn the witch.
No, for real. I was just like, I always remember there's I don't know if y'all played Halo growing up, but in Halo 2, when there's like this level where the character you're playing as is one of the elites, Arbiter. They're like actually going after like heretics in their alien race, and you'll just hear them all be like heretic, and you just go shoot them. Wow. Right. I always think of that when I hear that word. But and he starts talking, and he broke it down. He was like, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is now I can like check this. But he was talking about there's like macro and microevolution. Like microevolution was like we have different breeds of dogs. Like that's they obviously are different. They're all related in the same species, but they are different.
Yes.
But like the macroevolution that like everything came from we came from a single cell. That he doesn't subscribe to.
Yeah, macroevolution is evolution between species. Microevolution is almost very similar to adaptation. It's evolution within a species. So
and that's kind of the stuff that Darwin saw with like different birds, like their beaks were different for whatever they ate or with the environment they were in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that being the first kind of nudge to reconciling two for myself. And it's been fun. Even my mom has had we've had different talks about this, because I remember when I told her, we were in the car. I think we were like going to get groceries, and we were talking about either church sermon she was listening to or whatever. And we started talking about. She was like, "Wait, what do you think about like evolution and stuff?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll believe in evolution." I kind of said it in a way like trying to get her attention or like a little shock value out of it.
Yeah.
But it was a fun little conversation. I kind of just told her about that and just kind of went into more of a dialogue, which is always fun when you can have those conversations with folks.
I wanted to jump back for like just 2 seconds into
Please.
So when we're talking about like science and like the Bible, like how they kind of like either work together, some people believe they don't. I do notice like the approach, let's say like in the 1960s. So mainly this affects like the boomer generation, so 50s, 60s. But there was a huge area of the church going on like around the world of arguing for God's existence. So there was this is when like apologetics got really strong, and then you had the focusing approach arguments. Like it was like prove God exists, and then like once we prove he exists through logic and arguments and science, then we'll like consider him as a creator. So all these people that were like, prove God exists and I'll believe in him. And a lot of people feared science would make that more difficult because, and why? I don't know. There was a stigma that science was in the way because evolution was presented, and they were like, okay, well, this is something from science that's going against what we believe is the 6 days of, God created earth in the Bible. So we started to see this push between science and Christianity and what the Bible says. So that's when you had like Josh McDowell started preaching. Even Billy Graham talked a little bit about it. So they were coming in, they're like, okay, well, let's argue like why science is good for the Bible. And then also these theories that are being presented in science, like how do they go against the Bible? How do they not fall in line with God's plan? But now we're seeing today, as far as like what I currently see is it's pretty much the same. Like I feel like people are like, oh, a discovery was made today of potentially like life on other planets or something like that. And you're like, well, how does that fit in with the Bible? So you question it, but then it's like, okay, well, hasn't been really proven yet, except on Mars they found bacteria. Is that life? I don't know. So it's organic, yes. It lived once upon a time, but it's dead. So
they form those headlines so rough though, because I'm thinking of like, it's moving right now, kind of thing.
I know. I'm glad they do, because otherwise I wouldn't read them at all.
Clickbait.
That was sarcasm.
That's fair though.
There's something very interesting when it comes to like those who say like, prove to me beyond a reasonable doubt and give me evidence for God's existence, then I will believe. What's interesting is that with all these different discoveries that come out, especially more in the scientific atheist camp, their primary lens is through science. But at the same time, like when all these discoveries come out, you have to also question whether they are coming out truthfully or not, right? Because there is one argument that I've heard said for God is that there is a moral imperative that comes to like sharing things truthfully. Like, what if someone comes along and just makes something up, and then we just all believe it, you know, at face value, right? That's a moral question that comes from, okay, do we share this truthfully or not? And do we believe it? So it kind of forces us to think a little more critically about whether science is the only way we can look at life in that sense.
No, I agree, because it's like we have to look at, like, so the atheist, I think, view, like, when it comes to science is like they are applying theories, because I don't think science necessarily proves or disproves God's existence, like at its face value. Like, I think some people are like, oh, you know, because I think it was construed over a long period of time. So I think people are like, oh, because evolution like looks real, then that goes against the Bible, for instance. Or but then you have things that are questionable when it comes to Christian beliefs, such as stem cell research. They're like, hey, you know, we're doing, you know, taking stem cells from fetuses, you know, and we're finding ways to cure cancer. But like, it's morally, like, we believe that a fetus is still a child, and like you shouldn't be terminating a fetus during pregnancy. So that's where it gets kind of complicated. I think it's more of the theoretical beliefs versus what science is actually showing us. Like, I'm like, give me the data. Like you can show me, you can tell me all these things, but if I don't see the data, then I don't think there's a strong argument. So now, when you put data and logic together, you can have a strong argument.
Yeah. And I think it seems like when we talk about proof and proving something, God is just outside the realm of being proven or disproven. So when it comes to that and whether or not he exists, science is like can't do anything.
Right.
So even no matter what we do, and then honestly, like, okay, we already admit we're living by faith. But one thing that someone who lives purely like scientifically their life, I would ask, like, and challenge them to see just how much of their life is actually based on faith. Because I think like so much of our life just isn't and can't be proven like 100%, that we end up living on faith. We end up putting our faith in something because nothing can be proven. Even in the littlest things, like, okay, we're talking about evolution and how we got here and these kind of origin questions, but even like you have faith that the food that you order isn't going to make you sick. You have faith that when you go through a green light, the people going the other way at the red light will stop. It's just like, even little things like that, you live by faith. So it's not completely ludicrous to kind of translate that into being okay. Because I end up finding myself, I have learned to kind of ask more questions of God, to build that relationship. But I understand I'm not going to get all the answers that I would like to have as a human trying to finish out this life on earth. And just knowing that I won't, it helps me to not just be okay. I don't want to just cop out and kind of say that, but just like, it helps me understand the gaps I may have when you see like not only people in the Bible still have those questions. I mean, the famous one is, you know, Thomas and everything. Jesus still met him where he was at. He didn't say like, oh, why didn't you believe? Then I want to show you this. He's like, all right, you still don't believe? Okay, touch my hands. Like, my holes are here, holes here. Like, I'm here in front of you. Like, God will give us some proof, but he won't give everything, because then it still invites us in. So it kind of helps me be okay with things that I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of talking about things I don't know. Let's get to the meat. Were there dinosaurs?
Carne dinosauria. Just kidding. Dinosaur steak. Just kidding. Right. Well, yeah. I think when discussing dinosaurs, we have to kind of go to the Bible and see, like, first of all, like, does the Bible talk about dinosaurs? And if it does, what does it say about them? And I have so many good theories about what I think, like, I know, but I could be totally wrong. When I get to heaven, I'll be like, God, I'm sorry if anyone listened to me on this podcast, because like, I don't want to lead anyone astray, but these are theories.
Yeah.
So like breadcrumbs.
Yes,
Yeah.
breadcrumbs,
To help us and everyone like listening in, like, this is, consider this, consider X, Y, and Z, you know? So yeah, we'd love to hear like what you have to say about this. Cause I know a total wholesome of like 0 about dinosaurs when it comes to this.
Total wholesome.
I used all the words for that one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a hard one. I think even our friend Taka had a question on one of our interviews.
Yeah,
Like, I don't understand the timeline of dinosaurs, how that fits into the Bible. Like, does it fit into the Bible?
Nice. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Let's go.
I think there's a couple of factors that have to be determined when talking about dinosaurs in the Bible. One is you do have to consider creationism versus evolutionism, evolution. Well, and because the age of the earth does affect whether or not you believe if dinosaurs walked the earth, I think, in my opinion.
That makes sense.
So let's say if you believe in old world archaeology, like people call themselves old world Christians now. Yeah. If you believe that, then, which is honestly what I believe, I'll just be blatant about it. I don't believe man evolved. I believe the 6th day was like 6 times, you know. Have y'all heard that theory? So
it's like 6 periods over time.
Yeah. So the Greek, and like I said, theory. The 6 days in the original translation was actually 6 times was the word. So but now it was used in the Bible. The majority of times it was used in the Bible was used for days, but it was also used for years, and I believe hours at one point.
So it's the same like Hebrew word.
Okay. Exactly. Okay. So that's where it kind of opened a door for people that believe that evolution occurred to share their faith with the Bible, which I thought was cool. So it's kind of like, okay, well, it's because like in the end, in my opinion, like I don't think either one makes a difference if you're going to heaven or not. Like, I mean, because
I was gonna say like this kind of this whole episode is a lot of secondary issues. Yeah, exactly. It's not salvation worthy. It's kind of the fun stuff we get to talk about.
Exactly.
We're not saying was Jesus man or anything.
Exactly. Yeah. But I love that it did open the door, because it was a beautiful opening for all these people that believed evolution, that maybe doubted God, to be like, I can also believe the Bible. So now you have to be careful with the whole pick and choose thing, you know, like
yes, right.
You have to be careful with that. But so for me, it was like, okay, I believe the world is really old. So like I asked someone who believed the world was creationist as far as like 6,000 years old. I said, okay, if I gave you this turtle shell and I said bury it in your front yard, okay, how long do you think until it becomes a fossil? I said, you dig it up in 10 years, do you think it's going to be a fossil? No. 20 years? No. 50 years? So like me, from what I've determined, like on the math, like the math portion of it is the world has to be older than 6,000 years. But depending on how God created it, he could have sped through time or something like that. You know, I read some things where like evolution was more of like God painting the earth. So as he was creating the animals, so it could have also happened in 6 days, but it was his like version of time, not ours. So, so yeah, it's
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I believe it really just kind of, I just love that like it did open that door for people to at least investigate their beliefs with science.
Okay,
that's a good point, because I think I've also heard the argument too that the Bible doesn't actually say explicitly how many days Adam and Eve were in the garden.
Yeah,
like you have no idea like how long that time period was. Like
it says their lifespan, but not how long they were in the garden. Yeah,
exactly. Like that could have been however long they've been walking in the garden with God, and then the serpent comes along later on. Right. Like
yeah.
So that's one thing to consider. Like we're never told how long they were there.
Yeah.
So the Bible doesn't have a lot of little details that we like in literature today. We don't know what kind of breeze was blowing through there or anything. It's just like this happened and this happened and this happened. We think it's bland, but it's just like, no, the author's getting to a point.
Yeah.
What's interesting is like we do know that Adam and Eve weren't designed to die. So how old were they? When Satan first entered their lives. Yeah. We can jump into the argument. So Ryan, you recently shared like an Instagram video with me, and it was a theory I'd heard a long time ago, but I totally forgot about. But this guy was saying like, well, before the fall out of Adam and Eve, there was no death. So because also it was only like the animals and humans only ate plants. God commanded that. So it was kind of like, okay, well, but these dinosaurs like clearly have teeth designed to be, they're carnivores. So at what point were the dinosaurs like eating plants and then starting to eat animals? So then you have how long were they in the garden? And then you have the Garden of Eden sanctuary theory. Have y'all heard of this?
Nope.
So
tell us.
Yeah. So, and it's one, to me, it's a good argument. I don't know if I believe it, but it's definitely a good argument. But there are some fallacies when I've discussed it with people that I don't know logically if it could be true. But it was that the Garden of Eden, and they kind of show this in movies, and I always thought it'd be cool to make like an Indiana Jones type movie. But the Garden of Eden was actually a sanctuary on Earth. So Revelation talks about like a war happening, and God loses, like, was it a third of his angels or yeah? So, and a lot of people think that was when Satan fell. Actually, most theologists think that. So Satan comes to Earth with like a bunch of God's angels. They are evil. They follow Satan, but Satan how did he get into the Garden of Eden is one of my questions. But I also kind of wonder if that's a story that we're not supposed to know because we don't want to glorify Satan. But I also think that maybe Satan was outside on Earth kind of like doing his own thing, and maybe he was the reason evolution could have happened. Like maybe he was evolving carnivores so people would have to see death, an animal kill another animal, things like that. And then he was able to get his way into the Garden of Eden, which was the blueprint for the rest of planet Earth. A lot of people, just side note, a lot of people put Garden of Eden as something that didn't exist on planet Earth. They picture it's this like garden in the clouds. I'm like, no, it was here. It was here on Earth.
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of people think like it was the blueprint that Adam and Eve were supposed to take this blueprint of the Earth because he gave them commands to take care of the garden. He was like, so they were supposed to maybe grow this garden to the whole of the Earth. But there are some theories of like, well, God created the entire Earth perfectly, so that wouldn't fit. That.
Okay. He did say he looked at it and it was good on the days when he was done.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Okay. So you said that's a good argument, but you don't necessarily subscribe to that argument. Also, like, what parts of that argument do you not subscribe to? Yeah,
so I think, like, I don't know if I believe that, like, Satan was spending all this time on Earth just corrupting it and waiting to slither into Adam and Eve's life. It gets confusing because I believe it's when one of the sons leave, it says they run into other people. So we know that there were other people on the Earth too.
When Cain leaves.
Yeah, and they weren't necessarily, we don't know if they were good or bad. So it's like, okay, well, were they in another, like when Adam and Eve were created, did they have offspring? I don't know. Cain and Abel were first. But like, were there other people created? There's a lot of theories behind that too.
From how I've read it, because I had the same, I remember having this topic in high school. This is probably the first time I did apologetics. It was a high school friend posted this video, and it was or as a picture. It was a random picture of Kanye, but it was God creates Cain. God creates Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve have Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel. Cain goes and finds a wife and other people. How? And I was like, dang, how? So I grabbed my Bible and start looking. And I remember coming to chapter 5 when it goes through like the whole descendants, which, side note, I think Adam's great grandson is my namesake. His name's Jared. And it's
fair.
The correct spelling biblically. There's no 2 R's. There's no Y. It's just Jared. But in it, it says in chapter 5, verse 3, when Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Adam lived a total of 930 years, and then he died. So it talks about him having other sons and daughters. And it's kind of another one of those things like where it's just like we don't have the timeline of like, okay, when he was this age, then he was kicked out, and then he had these kids, and then they left, and then all this kind of stuff. We just know he had other kids, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you say dinosaurs like fit into this timeline, if at all? Like, were dinosaurs in the garden then?
Yeah, because it seemed like based on the last theory you had about like Satan maybe corrupting life outside, but you don't subscribe to that. So I was like, okay, how do you believe dinosaurs then?
Yeah, great question. And it's interesting because when you're talking about Adam and Eve too, so like scientifically they had the perfect DNA. So, but because of their fall and the DNA began to be diluted and mutated, so like that's when people began to experience illness and things like that. So the code sort of evolved a little bit, not like full evolution, but it, so, and it's like, okay, well, did that happen with the animal species too? So was there a change in their perfect DNA after the fall? Like, did Adam and Eve's fall corrupt everything of the world? Did it corrupt animals, plants, everything?
Right.
Like, we have ivy that takes over plants and kills everything. We have invasive mollusks that live in like Florida that will destroy plants, animal species.
Mosquitoes exist.
Yeah. Believe it or not, they don't really destroy anything. I wish they did, so I could have a reason to not
they
like
just
them.
attack Ryan personally.
And my skin,
My skin. They destroy my skin.
Yes, they do.
Exactly. Oh man, that's the state bird of Texas.
I was just in Texas and I still got bumps, bro.
Oh wow. I guess like being born and raised there, I don't get bit, so that's kind of my family. No one in my family does. So
they like dark meat apparently. That's the only explanation.
Maybe so. But yeah, as far as like, so mosquitoes, but you have, bugs probably didn't bite back then. Mosquitoes probably didn't need to drink human blood to survive. So was the Great Fall just the fall of man, or was it the fall of everything, like as far as its DNA makeup? It's a really cool thing to kind of explore.
I mean, if there was no death, or since there was no death before the fall, and then after the fall, everything dies, it obviously, at some level, everything was affected outside of people. Yeah. So that tracks. Does make sense.
So now, as far as like dinosaurs walking with man, which is kind of what you were asking, I think if we wanted to jump into like Job, that's kind of where we see the only two references.
Yep.
And so we can read those together. I don't think I have them typed out.
Job is also the oldest book to be written, right?
I'm pretty sure that people have dated. That's the first book.
Yeah. It wasn't Genesis written. That was first. It was Job written.
No, yeah.
So we've got Job like 40, 15 through 24. We've got Job 38. And then I believe there's another. Then we also have the first reference too, like is what some people consider the first reference, is actually refers to Noah's Ark when it describes like large, like scaly lizards coming onto the boat.
Noah's Ark?
Wild.
Yeah.
That was my next question.
Yeah, so they came 2 by 2. But that one's open for interpretation. It's like, was he talking about Komodo dragons, or was he talking about dinosaurs? So we don't really have enough evidence to conclude that portion was referring to dinosaurs.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. But then, but we do want to talk about Noah's Ark because there's a huge theory that supports, obviously, the loss of most of the dinosaurs, which is
the flood.
There we go. All right, proud of you guys. Let's go. So
we went to Sunday school.
There's a lot of evidence that the flood happened. I think most scientists and evolutionists, even if they don't believe in God, agree there was a massive flood. I think looking at all the evidence, if you do not believe there was a flood, I would like to hear your argument about it. Because like, okay, well, there's seashells on top of the mountain. Like, what other, is there a flock of birds that carried them up there? But there's way too many. So, yeah, just, so most scientists even agree there was a great flood. Was it the reason that most dinosaurs were wiped out? They can't answer that. A lot of people say meteor, a lot of people say disease. And then one of the interesting Christian theories is that before Noah's Ark, rain did not happen. Have y'all heard this theory?
No.
So rain is not referenced before Noah's Ark. And they believe that the earth, because we do know like the landscape over there and like Turkey and stuff was like really, really green at the time. And that the earth, because God had designed it to be like naturally irrigated. So that's why we have all these underwater aquifers and stuff.
It is the Fertile Crescent, that area.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that
so
makes sense.
they
That's what
believe
it's
that
called.
rain
The
didn't.
Fertile Crescent.
The area, like in the Old Testament, where all of the Bible happens, is called the Fertile Crescent.
Oh.
So there's a lot of like well irrigated land, as you're saying.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The geography is very like a land flowing with milk and honey. Also implies like it's a very plentiful, bountiful land with good resources and rivers flowing through it, etc.
Most people picture like kind of deserts with maybe a few olive trees and stuff. But
Exactly what I pictured.
Yeah, same.
yeah, so
true.
But before like Old Testament, it was the land of milk and honey. It was beautiful. It was paradise. It was beautiful. And so, but they also believe rain didn't happen because if rain happened, flooding would happen. And flooding was, brought death. So did flooding happen? Because if death didn't happen, So
Okay.
Your math is mathing.
So, and I don't know if I believe this theory, but it's a strong one. A lot of people believe that because there was no rain, there was a very humid canopy over the earth, which makes sense. The more humid it is, the more things grow typically.
Yes.
So when this canopy broke, when the flood happened, let's say the first time it rained, it was the first time this canopy collapsed, which is why there was such a major flood, is because there was so much rain in the sky that it flooded the earth.
That tracks.
And they believe that the air possibly changed. And so reptiles, as we were discussing, earlier, love for reptiles, they need humidity. Like my lizards at home, like they have 2 humidifiers. I have a gauge to make sure, because if they get too dry, they can die.
Yeah.
So these, dinosaurs potentially lived in this extremely humid climate. When the canopy broke and it dried up, even if there were any that survived the flood, then they died out because they couldn't breathe the air. So because they didn't have the humidity. Yeah.
Interesting.
I was actually taught this in my Christian high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how I know it's like a theory that's definitely like a big one.
That seems that tracks. It's plausible. That's very plausible.
So that also implies that like dinosaurs were around when people were
Yes.
in this. Okay.
So what's the reference from Job about the dinosaurs exactly?
Yeah. It's the behemoth. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Do you want to read it?
I think
Do you
I'm
want me to
there.
give you the verse?
Yeah. What verse is it? I can
So-
read it out.
Oh, I found it. 40:15.
Yeah. 15 through 24, actually.
Okay. Look at Behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength it has in its loins, what power in the muscles of its belly. Its tail sways like a cedar, and sinews of its thighs are close knit. Its bones are tubes of bronze, its limbs like rods of iron. It ranks first among the works of God, yet its maker can approach it with his sword. The hills bring it their produce, and all the wild animals play nearby. Under the lotus plants it lies, hidden among the reeds in the marsh. The lotuses conceal it in their shadow. The poplars by the streams surround it. A raging river does not alarm it. It is secure, though the Jordan should surge against its mouth. Can anyone capture it by the eyes or trap it and pierce its nose? That is a mighty creature.
Yeah.
Wow.
I do think I'm just like, oh, that's like a...
There's 2 theories about what it could be, but
All right.
What's
do you
the...
want the dino
what's the
one?
joint? Yeah.
It's like a bronchiosaurus.
Bronchiosaurus,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
So there's that theory. The other theory is that some people believe it was a hippopotamus. Because it's like, but then you have the tail of
The giant tail.
Yeah, the giant
Little
tail.
freaking...
Yeah. I know.
Little hippo tail.
Yeah, it was a little piggy nubbins or whatever you want to call it. So Yeah, I think, but it also describes how the lotus leaves hit it. So it's like, okay, well, it has to be able to go underwater. That's when I think it probably blended in and looked like a tree. So it'd like go near the shore, because the lotus flowers are typically by like the reeds on the shore, right? So it would go there, it would kind of, if you look at a tree, like it goes near and it kind of expands as it gets to the bottom. So you see like the neck of a dinosaur, and then it kind of expands as it gets to its shoulders.
Yeah.
So it may have looked like a tree, and the lotus leaves as well.
Wow. Okay.
And so,
Interesting.
yeah.
Huh.
And it's a beautiful description, and it also says like it was created along with man.
Yeah, that was an interesting one that came out. But I will say, like, then we get into the part of is Job meant to be taken literally? Which parts are poetry, kind of thing? Because I have heard, like, elsewhere in Job, there's a line that says, it's in Ecclesiastes. But yeah, it's like generations come and go, but the earth remains forever. Like, if you take that literally, does that mean the earth is going to be here forever? But everything dies or goes away and everything's turning to dust. So never mind. We can scratch that.
I think the earth is going to be here forever, though. Because I think when the heaven and marriage between
God
heaven and
comes
earth,
back, and establishes his kingdom forever, it's going to be
Yeah.
a physical place. That's
on
true.
earth
Yeah.
with,
Okay, that's why we wanted you here. That's why we wanted you here. All right, ignore me. As you were. What was the there's that one, and then there's the Leviathan, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, are we ready to jump out of Job, though?
Is it out of Job?
Because some people also think it was a crocodile. I'm sorry, that was the other big one.
Leviathan, because he's in the next one.
Yeah,
the next chapter.
Oh, the behemoth was the crocodile, not the Leviathan.
Oh, behemoth is crocodile.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. Job 3:8. Let those who curse it, who curse the day, who are ready to rouse up Leviathan.
So this is like the earliest reference in Job we have of the Leviathan. So, but we know that this is a beast of some sort because it's described as like, curse the beast or whatever, the Leviathan. But what's interesting is as we get further into Job, it's also referenced in Psalm 74:14, Isaiah 27:1.
Yeah.
We learn that there's possibly just one of them. So it doesn't say there are multiple Leviathans.
Right.
It's like people know this beast, and like killing it is such a huge deal. And because it's almost like a curse. So that's our first part. So then the next time it's referenced in Job is Job 41.
That's right.
Job 41. Can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook or tie down its tongue with a rope? Can you put a cord through its nose or pierce its jaw with a hook? Will it keep begging you for mercy? Will it speak to you with gentle words? Will it make an agreement with you for you to take it as your slave for life? Can you make a pet of it like a bird or put it on a leash for the young woman in your house?
What the heck?
God's like, just try any of these things. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Like when we jump to verse like 9, and it says, any hope of subduing it is false. The mere sight of it is overpowering. No one is fierce enough to rouse it. Who then is able to stand against me?
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it keeps, it goes for a little bit when he's talking.
God's on a roll.
Yeah. So we know this beast is like massive. We know it's scary. You can't take it down. It's an unstoppable force. It's almost like a kraken or something, Like,
That's literally what comes to mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, if it ain't a sea dragon or...
Yeah, it's more of a sea dragon than it would be like a giant octopus, that's for sure. But but so interesting to me because it's in the Red Sea, right?
I was going to say, it's not even like in an open
Yeah.
ocean. It's there.
Yeah,
And I'm just like...
so it's like the Loch Ness monsters, like mom, like
So interesting.
I think I've heard, what is it, the Red Sea, because it's the same one that they crossed to get out of Egypt.
Yes.
And it's like, it's like 5,000 feet deep or something. On each side, I'm just like, you can hide some stuff in there. That's pretty deep.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you could. And I read something recently about like where they crossed. It might have been more of like an underwater bridge. Like it was a little bit more
it
shallow.
was only like, what, 900 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what if like, I don't know, I'm like, what if the Leviathan was like there, like when they were
Passed by
walking?
them.
Yeah,
You're just watching through the walls of water.
Yeah, it's like, throw me a treat.
Just kidding.
Oh gosh.
God gave him a treat in the armies of Pharaoh.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I don't know. They all washed ashore, so I don't think they got eaten. But yeah. So we've got this verse of Leviathan, and some people are like, okay, that could be like. Some people say it's a metaphor, but it's so descriptive, and it's also the second time it's been mentioned, so we know it's important during this time. Like, it's something. It means something to the people, whether it's a symbol of something. But it's also something that's not good, and that they're terrified of, and it's kind of taking over this area that they live in. So they say, like, okay, stay clear of that. That's the dangerous area, but we can't fish, but we need the fish to eat. And so it's kind of like interesting, like sad if you're an animal lover, what happens to the Leviathan. But so yeah, the next spot we have here is Psalm 74:14. It was you who crushed the heads of Leviathan and gave it as food to the creatures of the desert. So that verse is a little bit more, okay, this isn't a metaphor. Like, they physically killed some giant sea monster, and it was probably so big, and maybe something that was just so cursed that the people didn't want to eat it. So they gave it, but I believe they did eat some of it. I think that's in a different verse. But let's say if they did eat some of it, there was so much excess that they had to give it to like the animals of the desert. So this is a massive creature. But I also think if there were more than one, that we would have had more than just this account. And then the last one it's referenced in is Isaiah 27:1. In that day, the Lord will punish with his sword, his fierce, great, and powerful sword, Leviathan, the gliding serpent, Leviathan, the coiling serpent. He will slay the monster of the sea. So, like, I think when God described things, especially, or the way the Bible described things as well, to make it easier for people to understand, especially the way Jesus spoke in parables, I think, to me, this is clearly saying, like, it's describing, like, a physical creature. So I think after reading Isaiah 27, I'm like, okay, Leviathan was definitely a creature of some sort that we have never seen in modern day. It could be out there, just saying.
What is it we know more about the moon than the depths of the ocean?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
There's a lot down there. It's scary.
Exactly.
That is so interesting.
So after reading these passages, like, Ryan, like, what do you think of the Leviathan? Like, how does this... Well, like, what thoughts are being stirred up in your head right now?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, like, I am open to the possibility that these creatures existed and, that they were little creatures and God did what he said he would, that he crushed the heads of the Leviathan. I'm also open to the interpretation that I've also heard it said, like, Leviathan has also been used as a metaphor to describe, like, Babylon too, or like the nations that are threatening Israel at that time. And so, like, there's multiple heads, so multiple nations, like, oppressing Israel. So maybe it's both and. Maybe, like, there was a little creature and these nations were also oppressing Israel. Like, it could be both. But the fossil records don't lie that there were dinosaurs, right? So it's like, they existed. We cannot deny that. And whether they were on Noah's Ark or not, and got wiped up by the flood, I think those, like, I don't think it is an issue of contradicting the Bible, though. I think that's the biggest thing, is, like, we can go back and forth about these theories, and they're really fun to talk about.
I was gonna say, it's
right.
fun.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super interesting.
But like you're saying, it doesn't, whether people and dinosaurs exist at the same time, whether they didn't, whether the earth was made in 6 literal days, whether it wasn't, it doesn't change the real message of Christianity, of the Bible, of the gospel, of God wanting to bring us into relationship. And if anything, these kind of quote unquote gaps or questions or things that just don't line up are an invitation into that. It's like God's biggest heart. Our pastor was talking about this through the series, and he's talking about there's only one mission of God. The only mission is I'm here to bring people of all nations into my presence. It's how it's been since people left the garden. That's been number one, A1 on God's list of that's what he's doing. And he will use any means. If this is something that really you struggle with Christianity, if evolution, science, whatever it may be, God's inviting you into that. I think he left this open to interpretation in a sense because some people might need it, like who are, this is something that they struggle with. Like we said, our friend, this is one of the things that he's talked about is just like, how do we, he is a Christian, he believes, but it is like, I do get hung up on this sometimes. And if it's a way for God to get a little crack in the door, just get your ear turning towards him to hear an answer, he's going to take it. Because at the end of the day, it's about that relationship. It's about God and humanity being reconciled. So I love having these conversations. It gets people talking about Jesus. I'm all for it.
Yeah, me too. And I think a lot of people say like, oh, like, I don't know if I believe the Bible because it like contradicts this. And a lot of times what I find out is like, they don't know where in the Bible it's contradicting something. So I hear a lot more with like my like Catholic friends, but it's more of like moral issues that are discussed and not actually scientific issues. So as far as like science, like how is it disproving the Bible? I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
If anything, it's supporting it. So
for real, because at the end of the day, science is just telling us how things are happening, or the process of them. The whys and the other stuff, that science can't deal with that. But when you like, we talk about it on one of our previous episodes about just the fine tuning of the universe. It just points back to an intelligent mind behind it. And you were telling us earlier about your eye, right?
Yeah, teleology.
Yeah. What is that again?
So yeah, teleology is there's things are designed so perfectly that there has to be a creator logically. So in our eye, like if you look at like the actual design of the eye, like it's like flipping the image upside down before it sends it to our brain. It's like crazy how your eye works, and you're like, there's no way that we see this clearly by chance. So there's no way. So and I think like that goes back to like, so let's say like with like evolution, for instance, a lot of people like are kind of like, okay, well, evolution happened, but God caused it. There wasn't this like chance of like all the pieces of a watch made, thrown into the ocean, coming together to make a perfect watch. That's when you have to put logic in there, like, but there's a chance. No, like there really isn't. They're not going to float perfectly together, screw the pieces together. Like you don't hear that happening. So why would it ever happen? And so like it doesn't really matter. Like you said, if you believe either one, I don't think it's going to hurt like your walk of faith at all. If anything, it's going to help it because you're going to want to research it and learn more about it. But there are churches that disagree with that. So I know
fair enough.
In the South specifically, it's evolution is.
You can say that, you're from there.
Evolution came from the devil.
Bobby Boucher's mama.
Devolution.
Devolution, bro. That's a new one. I haven't heard that one before.
That's funny.
Oh man,
that's so good. Like I don't think any book or any study will ever get us to a point of understanding everything 100%. There is always a level of mystery involved.
Because then we got God in a box, and that's impossible. So it's never going to happen.
We fully can't understand the grandness of God, of the universe, and we're like just scratching the surface still, and I think science has done a great job of getting us to many new avenues of thought, new ways of thinking about things, understanding like how beautiful things were made. Like I mentioned before with you guys, like Fibonacci's number exists in like nature, like the spiral shape that you see. I don't know If that's the right number, I'm gonna double check that right now.
The Da Vinci Code. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the Fibonacci sequence, you can see that in like the shape of a seashell, like the perfect spiral, or in a flower. You know, like math is like so fine tuned to make these beautiful designs that we love seeing, and like all of our modern day art is based off of like just these things we see in nature. Like creation is meant to point us back to our creator. That is evidence in itself, is the things we see around us.
Yes.
And man, you also made a point too, like if everything were a matter of time plus chance plus matter, and we were just a random bunch of atoms that just came together just randomly, I don't know how love is possible. You know, how it's possible to love someone, especially someone who is your enemy, which is what Jesus talks about so much, that goes against logic almost.
Yeah.
Right? Like
you ain't even got to bring Jesus into it. Just like, why can't I just knock you out and take your stuff right now? We're all just atoms. Why is that wrong?
There is no morality involved. There's no sense of right and wrong. Yeah, we're just working based on our molecules, our biomechanical mechanisms, and we're robots essentially.
Yeah, and then we have no accountability. It's just like, sorry, those just chemicals in my brain. You know how it goes, bro.
Exactly. Sorry, my chemical reading is Capricorn.
Oh Lord.
I have one more theory that I wanted to go over with you.
Please.
Go for
Just
it.
one more. Yeah.
Go for it.
So, this is an interesting thing, and this is kind of where I lean towards what is my belief on it. So, reptiles, as they age, they grow. They don't stop growing until they die. So, you take a lizard, for instance, a fun little lizard, like, hey, little guy, and you give him to Adam when he's created. 900 years later, when the average lizard is only living to be like 100 years old, but they're getting like this big, 900 years later, how big do you think that lizard's going to be? So there are theories that lizards, like your standard lizards, the ones that are still alive, like if they continue to grow and they had the health and they had the DNA that they originally had when they were created, they would have gotten to the size of a massive dinosaur.
Yeah.
Which is why they say that crocodiles are dinosaurs that survived and things like that. So
Interesting.
I do believe the last of the dinosaurs, I believe there were a lot of dinosaurs with Adam and Eve. I do believe that. I don't believe there were much left by the time the flood happened.
Yeah.
And I believe that like whatever were left must have died off, or like the Leviathan, he was like the last monster in the ocean that was killed. And so yeah,
I like that.
how do you feel about that? Yeah.
It makes sense. I'm a reptile guy, so it makes sense. All the biggest lizards, it's an automatic, that's the oldest one. Like when they picked up a what was it, that giant saltwater crocodile in the Philippines a few years ago. It was 24 feet, 2.5 tons, and the joint was like 80, 90 years old.
Yeah,
it was something like that. It was ridiculous. And the same thing with sea turtles. Sea turtles already grow or just get easy 100 plus, but they just grow. So like the Galapagos tortoises that are here at the zoo have been here since before the opening of the zoo, and they're just massive. So that does make sense. And then like crocodiles, obviously, it makes sense they would survive because they're already in water in a sense. So like if the earth floods,
They can survive.
they could survive. And then like you were saying, the kind of degradation of the DNA kind of is what we have today.
Yeah, that's why we don't live as long. They don't live as long either, you know? They're kind of outshining us right now. But, but yeah,
That's so interesting.
Yeah, that was when I read about that, I was like, man, that actually makes a lot of sense.
It does.
So,
Man, we got questions for God when we get to heaven. That's all I know.
I guess we'll figure it all out when we get there.
We'll
We'll see it all. This is so
Exactly.
cool. Well, thank you, Chris, for these fun theories to think about, and your input and the research you've gone through over the years, and sharing your thoughts. This has been a stimulating conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Glad to be here. We got to explore my ADD brain tonight. So
Let's go everywhere,
Yeah.
all over the place.
All of the things.
yeah, no, I totally enjoyed it. Like these are types of conversations I like to have, like because they help my brain just kind of like flow too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Thanks so much, guys. We enjoyed having this conversation. We will see you guys next time.
Peace.
Peace.